Analucia McGorty is the costume designer behind Pose alongside Lou Eyrich, who did costumes on the first season and is also a producer on the series. I'm Kevin Jacobsen of Gold Derby here with the both of them today. So to start things off, I wanted to know, actually just from each of you, what your favorite costume was from season 2 of Pose.
Oh.
Wow.
I have so many. But I do love from the first episode the Marie Antoinette costume. I mean, that was just so much fun, so creative, and it was so interesting to learn how to make it function and to work with our tailors to understand the mechanics of it, as well as our actress and our Dominique and our choreographer Twiggy, to make sure that it functioned and worked with what was scripted and how Ryan saw the scene playing out. So that was a really fun thing to create, and to really, it was a lot of figuring out, a lot of trial and error. So I learned a lot on that one, which I always think is a good thing. And then I also loved Candy's fringe dress from the 4th episode, just because that was such a love note to the story and to the actress and to that community.
How about you, Lou?
I agree with Anna on the first one. On the pilot episode, I loved Electra. I loved the whole court, what she did with the guys and it just had such a great, unusual flair to it. So I loved what Anna did there. But I also really loved the swimsuit edition. I loved seeing all the ladies come out on happy times in their version of swimwear. And I thought Anna and her team did such a great job with that.
Yeah. So we were talking a little earlier just before this, but what changed in the process from season 1 to season 2, especially for you, Lou, who you're no longer credited as a costume designer in season 2. You're still very involved. You're still a producer, though. Can you just explain what the dynamic was and working with Analucia, too, for season 2?
Yeah, so Anna and I talked at great length in the beginning about where the characters were going to go, and a lot of it's on the page. We have, as everyone knows, fantastic writers who really put a lot of thought into where the characters are, and they know the arc more than we do. So as we get usually 1 or 2 episodes at a time. So we did talk about their growth and the time span. It was 3 years later, Anna?
Yeah.
And there was a big arc and change from what we had done in season 1 time-wise. So Anna did great tone boards, which then we run by Ryan, because Ryan Murphy's very hands-on on the costumes on all his shows, but Pose is one of his big pet projects. So we want to make sure he's happy with the direction. So Anna did great tone boards. I print them in LA. I get them to Ryan. Ryan goes through all his notes, and then I transfer those notes to Anna. And then Anna started the process of collaborating with the actors, because I think the actors season 2 had a bigger feeling of who their characters were. The first season, we were all still trying to figure it all out, I think. And I would defer to Anna, but they definitely had more contribution to their characters the second season.
100%, yes.
Take it away.
I think Lou's right. I mean, I think what Lou Eyrich has done for not just Ryan Murphy TV, but for television in general, is to create this fantastic dynamic between costume designers and a producer who really understands the ins and outs of what we do. And not to mention is like one of the best designers of our generation. So that's very helpful. But it's great to be able to show Lou the boards, go through it with her before presenting to Ryan, because she and Ryan have had such a close relationship for so long. She really understands when he says something on the page or one of the writers mentions a designer, she's like, I know Ryan loves this collection. You should look at this, look at the lines of that. So those type of things are so helpful, not to mention, just her 20 plus years of being an incredible designer, gives us a lot of insight. Like, you might want to rethink using that fabric because they're going to be dancing on the floor. So things like that is such a great thing for all the designers on Ryan Murphy TV. And I will say I missed her a lot on the second season.
Yes, you do.
Because we really have a good time together. I mean, we're
Yes.
friends, so that's part of it. But I think, the working with the actors the second season, because they knew the characters, they had talked to Ryan themselves, they had talked to the writers, Janet Mock and Stephen and Our Lady J, about the arc that might be happening. So they had some ideas about, how they might want to move in things, or how they've grown up, or how they've changed. Like, for example, the second season, little Poppy is very different than he was the first season.
Yes.
And he's grown up into more of a young man who's has ideas and goals, and like is more focused. And whereas the first season, he was like a little kid who was looking for a family and looking for a mom. And so we wanted to make sure that we were working with the actor to see where he wanted to take it, because he physically changed for the role. So that was a really important thing, to be able to talk to everybody about that.
Mm-hmm. So I guess for you, Analucia, what is the balance between looks that you're designing yourself and then just, shopping at vintage stores to find inspiration?
Right. Well, I mean, we really design and create and make very special pieces. There will be a category described, or there'll be Ryan will talk about, I really want the actor to be able to do this in the scene, and this is the palette that I'm looking for. And then we'll create some sketches and designs and Lou will go over it with Ryan, and then we can, make that from scratch. But in television, it moves really fast. So even if I wanted to design every single piece, it's just not a possibility. And it's also, sometimes you have to think about stunts, which you have to have multiples for, so you can't really make all of those. And beyond that, it's a period piece. So you need to make sure that you are showing that story of the period through the clothing. And everybody has an imprint of the period in their heads, either from like when they were younger, or seeing pictures of their family when they were younger, or television and movies from that decade. So vintage, and making sure that those designers are represented that were very loud and big in those time periods, is important to the storyline.
Mm-hmm. So do you have outlines of just the kinds of wardrobes that each of these characters would have? Because there's just so many great different costumes on this show, but I think each one of them makes so much sense for just who they are as people. Like, I'm just thinking with Blanca, it's often very kind of simple, but also very elegant. With Elektra, she's usually just showing off her richness, basically. Do you have like extensive notes for that, or is it just kind of instinctive at this point?
Well,
Go ahead, Lou.
Oh,
I'll let her talk mostly, but it comes from Ryan Murphy.
Yeah.
He way in the beginning, season 1 prep, and before, he already, it again was on the page, but he had very specific notes how each character should look, and we built closets on that. And it did take some spiraling in to finesse each character. And then I'll let Anna take it from there.
I agree totally. And I was just going to say that Lou and I worked before we even started on the show, just sort of developing research and figuring out, based on what Ryan had asked, that these characters showcase. And so Lou and I worked really hard. Those first few fittings, I think they were like 6 hours long for the first season, just trying to figure out who these characters are and who they could be, because the hope was to see the evolution and the story keep going through seasons. So they had to start from a place and be able to get to another place. They couldn't just, well, I mean, maybe with the exception of Elektra. She's always glamorous. Even when she was homeless, she was still pretty glamorous.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that kind of, I mean, Billy Porter wears so many fabulous outfits, as pray tell. What is it like dressing him in particular compared to the other characters?
Take it, Anna.
Well, I mean, we worked really close with Billy on the costumes and his thoughts about the character. And he has that amazing ability to really fall into the character, even in the fittings. And Ryan had very strong notes about Billy, and he really wanted him for Pray Tell to be a dandy. And it was written on the page, like a lot of things, walking into his house and he's in an elegant dressing gown. So things like that was great because the writers really had a strong sense of who that character was. So we just flushed that out with all the design. And he is definitely the most fun. I think Lou and I are both really interested in dandies to begin with, everywhere from the 20s to the 60s in London, which Lou really showed me a lot more examples and beautiful books on that. But we wanted him to be really classic and fashionable, but, outrageous, because he is the host. He is the person on the stage. You have to be able to focus on him and all of that bright, sparkly chaos. And so it's just a joy to dress him. I mean, I think about it even now, like every day I think about how to mix the patterns.
Well, you also get to design some leisure looks for episode 9, the big excursion to the beach. One of you mentioned it earlier. It was kind of a big departure from some of the high-end fashion sort of looks for the ballroom. How did you just come up with the palette for all of those characters for that episode, especially like all of Elektra's pink outfits?
Yeah, so good.
I think, we wanted to think about what would these women think is a beautiful thing to wear to somewhere like the Hamptons? Mm-hmm. And what would they look at in fashion magazines and think was the epitome of elegance on vacation? And, things that are in an editorial aren't necessarily something that people are going to wear on the beach, but I always thought would take that literally. Like, this is what people wear when they go to the Hamptons. And we also thought a lot about the time period, this was the late 80s, early 90s, and colors and pastels and hot pinks and stuff were in fashion, but not necessarily in the sort of like country club look or the country club crowd that they go to and see at the restaurant that they have dinner in. They look really out of place in that restaurant. And that was really important for us to make sure that they stuck out more than just, being so glamorous and so beautiful and possibly like in the scene being clocked. And so we wanted to make sure that their clothes told a story of them being unique to the situation.
Mm-hmm. And I love just seeing the contrast between all of them and then just that woman that goes up to them just in her outfit is just such a great contrast.
Yeah.
But in the finale, we have the elders of the council deciding to walk the runway at the ballroom. So many fun looks from that scene, especially Pray Tell's kind of Diana Ross look. Can you just talk more about that costume alone on top of all of the other great ones we get in that scene?
Well, that definitely came from Ryan. He really wanted Diana Ross, big hair, big feathers, Diana Ross, 70s and 80s on the top of her game. And, that's pretty easy to like put Billy into something glamorous and him feel like Diana Ross. That wasn't a stretch. I think probably the funniest parts of the fittings and even the rehearsals was Billy trying to pretend like he didn't know how to walk in heels. We gave him heels that were wobbly on purpose to help him kind of like act like he couldn't walk, because he's so good. I mean, doing kinky boots, he is the master of walking in heels. So he wanted like a kitten heel that was wobbly so that it would, make it difficult for him. But yeah, we just wanted that storyline that they wrote and that was such a big part of Pray Tell's story, which was that he had a hard time being in touch with his femininity and that he always felt like he had to hide it and that he was shamed for it from being a little boy, that he never wanted to showcase that. I mean, I can't think of anybody more feminine and glorious in that than Diana Ross. So it felt like we wanted to push that as hard as we could.
Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to know, just out of curiosity, because you had the honor of dressing Miss Patti LuPone, who gets to wear some really fabulous outfits herself, different but still very fabulous. What was that experience like?
I mean, it was amazing. I just loved Patti LuPone. Lou, I mean, we can't say it. We've all had different fittings with her. Lou had worked with her previously, and I, was a little nervous about it. And I called Lou and she's like, oh no, she's so hilarious. You're going to have such a great time. She's going to sing in the entire fitting, which she did. And it was just, I mean, our tailors were just falling over because they couldn't believe that we were fitting Patti LuPone as she's singing show tunes to us. But Patti loves clothes. I mean, she has incredible taste herself, and she really loves a hat. And so putting her in things was so much fun. And she just, again, just as similarly to Billy, she just immediately became that character. And, having lots of ideas and notes and her thoughts about it, it was a beautiful connection between Ryan Murphy's vision of her, the true story kind of inspired by that character, and Patti herself. And being able to put all of that together in like all Escada was just, one of the great moments of my very young career, but it was really glorious.
Well, last year, the two of you were nominated together at the Emmys for Best Period Costumes. Lou, you've won 5 Emmys, so this was just another great celebration of your work. But for Analucia, this was your first ever nomination. And then Lou, you were also nominated as a producer in Best Drama Series. How did the both of you feel to get this kind of a warm reception from your peers, specifically for Pose?
Go ahead, Anna.
I mean, I could cry right now just thinking about it. It was such a huge honor, but I mean, and I told this to Lou, but it was such a huge honor to be nominated with Lou, because Lou, for me, is such a huge mentor and somebody I look up to as a designer, and to be able to experience that with her, as well as some of the other designers that were nominated for Ryan Murphy TV that night, was so amazing. I mean, we're all such good friends at this point, and we've all worked together to help each other. Just to be there with Paula Bradley and Sarah Evelyn Bram and Lou, it was just an amazing experience. And that people saw the beauty of Pose and celebrated this new story that was being told, that needed to be told, and that there's so many more stories that are similar or have not had a chance to be highlighted, felt amazing. It was just an amazing experience to be there with our whole crew and to be there with Lou.
What about for you, Lou?
Well, for being nominated for Pose was really special. And yes, I've been nominated before, won before, and it never gets old. It's always exciting. It's always exciting to be in that room, and being invited to the party is it's a feeling that's hard to even express, but it completely humbles me to be surrounded with so many talented people. But I think for this one, I mean, when we were making the first season of Pose, we were all doing it for the first time in that storytelling, and that alone what made it special. But I always felt that we were a little bit like the little engine that could, and so to remember that process, and then getting it up and running, and that first ball, and it just was so exciting, and I really wanted it to get recognized, not necessarily even for our work, but as a project. And I just feel like the story needed to be told, and I was proud to be a part of Ryan Murphy TV and the show getting recognized. But the icing on the cake was Anna and I getting nominated.
Yeah, I talked to Stephen Canals recently, and he mentioned the same thing, that it's just the little engine that could. I think that's such a great metaphor for this beautiful show.
Yeah.
But if you like this interview, hit like and subscribe and head to goldderby.com to make your predictions. Thank you both so much for talking to us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.